Welcome back to ASC's Medieval Gardens, or in this case, the car park at our Essex office.
So, what am I doing out in a concrete car park? Well, this episode is about weeds. We'll be leaving the example garden behind us to look at some uninvited guests growing in the rest of my allotment, and also foraging for them along roadsides and in car parks. To medieval writers, weeds were a useful addition to the kinds of cures we talked about in the last episode. Many are surprisingly edible too, although please don't go around eating weeds unless you're absolutely sure what you're doing. So, let's go see what we can find. So I've come to the unkempt back bit of my allotment that usually I wouldn't show anybody, but it's a really good place to look for weeds, especially the ones we're looking for on our foraging trip. And we have these culprits, which I'm pretty certain you can recognise, that are stinging nettles. Stinging nettles are really weird actually, because they're actually edible. You can use them in tea and soup, and according to the internet you can also make beer out of them, but I wonder how that tastes. Archaeologically, they're found in Barking Abbey, and in our leech book they're used for dog bites, headaches, and they're also a supposed cure for smallpox. So we've got some fat hen by the side of the road. Fat hen, goosefoot, or wild spinach is an annual weed and is very invasive. It's very commonly seen along roadsides, and in some places in the world it's used as a vegetable crop or for animal feed. Fat hen has been found archaeologically in medieval sites including Barking Abbey, as well as the excavations in Coppergate in York. So one of the main weeds that I have to deal with on my little allotment is thistles. My allotment is crawling with them. They're part of the daisy family. They're actually really, really good pollinators. You see bees on them all the time around here. And they're found in the leech book for wound cleansing, which it doesn't actually specify which part of the plant, but I can't imagine that's particularly comfortable. Groundsel, or Old Man in Spring, is an annual weed. The flower heads are small, white and wispy, and are transmitted by being blown in the breeze or catching on clothing or animal fur. Groundsel is actually poisonous, but it's found in the medicinal writings in the Old English Herbarium in a recipe for a cure for gout. So this really common weed, which is usually found by the side of the road, is kelp parsley. It's part of the carrot family and it has these beautiful flowers on top of it. All parts of the plant are edible, so you can eat the flowers, you can eat the leaves, you can eat the stalk. It's also found archaeologically from medieval sites. It's found in Coppergate, which is the Viking site in York, and from Barking Abbey, which we'll talk about later. In our leech book, it's found in Leech Book 3, and it's found in a possible cure for cancer, of all things. With our foraging complete, it's time to check back in with Elsa, who's been looking at some weed taxa from Barking Abbey.
Hi, I'm Dr. Elsa Neveu. So today I'll talk to you about weeds. Weeds are interesting because they are good indicators about the growing conditions of crops. They can help us to identify husbandry practices and characterize the local vegetation. They can give us clue on when crops were sowed, when the fields were weeded, when or how crops were harvested, what type of soil were cultivated, poor or rich in nutrients, or damp or dry or even acidic. Also, we can have clues on how crops were stored. So this material is coming from the excavation near the ruins of Barking Abbey from the fill of the channel. So these samples revealed some waterlogged plants remains, which gave some details about the local vegetation. You've got spear liver orage / common orage. So it's quite characteristic of disturbed and waste ground of all types. I also got some common nettle. So this plant is quite common in many habitats, like woodlands, fens, cultivated grounds. So we quite see them every day. So we've got also gypsy wort, which is common in most England and Wales, and this species is frequent in fens, wet fields, or by lakes and rivers. So we also have some common chickweed, which is quite an ubiquitous weed of cultivated and open ground. It meant that she could easily spread or grow in more or less every place. The last one is called henbane, and it's quite common in some maritime sand or shingle or even waste ground, and especially when it has been manured by the cattle. So these species that we found at Barking Abbey are indicating waste ground places, but also fields, which were quite nutrient rich and also a bit damp, according to those species. However, the exact origin of those weed taxa are difficult to specify. Open features such as pits, ditch or well or even channels can remain open for extended periods, allowing the waste to accumulate gradually. So these plants that we've got could just come from the ground near the structure, so we don't know yet, but hopefully with a full analysis we'll be able to tell you more.
Thanks, Elsa. It's sort of comforting to know that people in the medieval period also might have struggled with stinging nettles. Learning more about weeds has given me a new appreciation for them. As well as being fantastic pollinators and some of them being edible, they can actually tell us a lot about the surrounding vegetation in the past. So, if like me, you're struggling with a mountain of weeds in your garden, just think, maybe you're helping a future archaeobotanist. Next episode is the last in this series, where we'll be looking at medieval flowers and reflecting on the series as a whole.